Hi, I'm Mark Best, a chef, restaurateur, ambassador. Uh, what else do I do? I attend symposia, including Terroir, which I've been to Berlin and Warsaw, and Toronto as well, where I met Arlene and Rebecca and fell in love with their program and them personally, but it's another question. And yeah, so currently I'm in Sydney and I'm on board Dream Cruise Lines. I was until COVID-19, where I have been a celebrity chef for the cruise line. I have 3 restaurants. So wait and see what happens there. I'm also ambassador for AEG Domestic Appliances, which I've been for 5 years, amongst other things.
We want to start with, how you got into your career. And I know that you've told this story a zillion times, but we did have someone send in that question mark. So more from the point of view of what, ignited the passion for you to get into cooking and why you're still in it.
The passion came later. I mean, it was just really a form of escape. So I was an electrician, started an electrical trade in the gold mines in Western Australia, and in a small country gold mining town of 1,200 people, went to Sydney and was working on submarines. And I think I was in an Oslo-class submarine doing night shift deep in the battery box, changing batteries, covered in acid and fiberglass and grease and airless. And I think I decided I needed a change in life. So cooking was the escape route. The passion came later. It just was a means of escape, and it was just a good idea to have this pipe dream of running a cafe and serving a few cappuccinos and a work-life balance, which of course is completely magical thinking, but things turned out okay, actually.
Any regrets, not regrets, but any sort of things you would change in the course of your career and the way that it panned out?
I would have liked to have made more money, but that's probably also magical thinking. So anyone wanting to go into the industry to make money, forget it. Go and collect aluminium cans or something. You'll do better.
And not to mention, it's not about work-life balance either, typically.
No, you have to make a big, juicy rationalization and say that it's was a lifestyle choice. It's not a job. That's hence we use the word passion, which is also a rationalization.
So, Mark, I want to talk a little bit about how you guys are affected by this craziness that's extended globally. Mark and I have been good friends for some time now, and he was sending me texts. We saw each other last in Perth in November. So you guys got hammered by the wildfires first, which was pretty devastating, kind of a wake-up call to sort of some climate crisis, and then this pandemic. And you were sending me texts going, it's going to be bad, it's going to be bad. So you were kind of, as you just pointed out, my oracle in sort of foreseeing the future. But just, can you walk us through like your mindset? Because you also work for a Chinese cruise line who was hammered first. For me personally, and it still remains somewhat surreal, where were you at? Where was your head at?
My cruise line, Dream Cruise Lines, were one of the first to withdraw from service. They basically cancelled their cruises. They cancelled their itinerary everywhere, and one of the first to do so, and withdrew, cancelled, refunded all of the passengers and withdrew to Malaysia, where all 3 ships went at anchor with a skeleton crew. So that's why I was sort of ahead of the game. I mean, they had quite a torrid experience with SARS back in 2003, and hence you'll see the reaction of Hong Kong, China, South Korea, also Taiwan, who did very well out of this with the numbers. They were the first to react to it and treat it seriously and shut everything down. And the public also did what they were told, because they also remembered how bad SARS was. And this is another level. So that's why I was sort of ahead of the game and just saying, okay, this is serious, because I knew what was happening in China.
It's interesting to me that we're not looking more to the Chinese. As you said, they dealt with SARS. I mean, as I understand it, Hong Kong, they had swine flu, they had the bird flu. Yeah. They're becoming experts on dealing with global crises and pandemics. Why isn't the world actually looking to China as a model of how to rebuild, or best practices of how to get out of this?
Well, because America and China are in a propaganda war over it. China's claiming that it wasn't produced in a lab in Wuhan and that was naturally occurring. America claims that it is. They need someone to blame. Trump's in all sorts of political bother, and also they're still in the midst of a torrid trade war as well. So they're using this as, you know, leverage against each other. So their response to it, you know, given it's basically a totalitarian state. So that's the only reason that, you know, their numbers and the effect from it was as low as it was. They were able to shut it down. I mean, look at America now. We're up to 69,000 casualties and counting, because the administration is so fractured and they just haven't treated it seriously from day one. I mean, Trump, even when he said he'd shut down flights from China, I mean, another 43,000 people came in from China after he said he'd shut it down. So, you know, it's just politics.
Mark, one of the things I want to dig into a little bit is the state of our industry. And I was hoping to have probably the most candid conversation with you, as we've got that familiarity.
It's one word, dire. Yeah.
Well, but okay, so here's the thing. We've both been in the industry for a long time. It's always been broken. It's always been a fragile industry. As you mentioned, you know, low pay, long hours. What can we take away? What are we learning about this that we need to seriously repair? And yeah, how do we move forward?
In regards to Australia, you've mentioned the fires before, the bushfires, which were unprecedented. That was probably the straw that broke the camel's back. COVID is the straw that I don't know how I can extend that metaphor, because the camel is friggin' buried, and you know, our people cover. I mean, what this industry doesn't need is more debt, even if it was to be interest-free loans. They have no mechanism to repay from here. So the only people I know that are going to survive this probably are people that perhaps own their freehold or were able to get some rent relief. I mean, our government has been pretty good and given the industry something called JobKeeper. So if you qualify, about $750 a fortnight, a week for each worker, which is that's the basic wage here. It may seem a lot, but that's the basic wage here. And that's keeping some people afloat. And then they've also gone to do takeaway and whatever else they could, some more successfully than others, but obviously everyone's doing it. So the same level of competition is at play even doing this. So I would say that it's the crisis we needed to have.
That's kind of where I was going with that. I mean, before the crisis, maybe not in Australia. Well, yeah, in Australia too, I think, we were dealing with too many restaurants, too many mediocre restaurants, in my opinion, bad business planning, again, chronic shortage of staff across North America and Europe. I'm not sure how it was in Australia, but, people would say, we'll hire anybody who's even breathing. So, I mean, we needed a correction. And so what could we potentially take out of this to move forward to actually, like, what do we need to do now as smart business people to think, how do we keep the restaurants we love alive as opposed to all the Chipotles of the world?
Maybe you can't choose. It may be the Chipotles or the Taco Bells that are going to survive. It may be the mediocre family-run restaurants that are going to survive. You can't choose who was going to survive. It depends on their particular financial situation. So this is not a weeding out of the bad and keeping just the quality. There's going to be severe attrition here, and who knows who's going to survive. What I do know, and positively, is that the industry will rebound in some form. I mean, it's a food delivery system that bound with culture, and our society relies on it now quite a lot. Now that Jesus is dead, we need restaurants, and so it will rebound. But the only issue is, will it be the current players? Will it be the current actors that are the ones that are going to be part of the recovery? Maybe not. Maybe we're going to lose a significant amount of people that are already in the industry. They'll have to move on and do other things. They're just not going to be able to recover financially or perhaps even emotionally A lot of them will be basically going through bankruptcy, as we call it. And the fallout is going to continue. In Australia, some of the really big players like John Van Handel, he's decided not to open a significant restaurant in Melbourne called Long Grain. He just said the figures just don't add up. And they haven't added up for a long time. I mean, we work between an industry average in Australia. We have a lot of restaurants of between 2 and 4%. And that is nothing. I mean, we just need the bushfires was enough to kill a lot of restaurants, plus COVID on top. Then we have all of these wage scandals of underpayment. We have, all sorts of turnover in terms of business. I mean, these are just all symptoms of an industry in distress. You have big groups. You have famous people like George Columbaris from MasterChef, was caught up in a wage scandal owing nearly $8 million in back pay. Look, it wasn't an accident. There was a deliberate decision, but the decision was done just to extract some profit from the industry. And the only way they can do that is from basically, with wage theft. And that was becoming more and more prevalent. And that is a symptom of an industry that's the poor financial model and was broken.
And you operated a fine dining restaurant until about 4 years ago. You decided to close that down. I'm interested to hear your opinion of fine dining, especially in the context of today, but also why you made that decision to move into a different direction.
I credit myself with being the Nostradamus of the industry and closing down that. But I would say that I was probably 2 years too late. Even in 2016, we were coming up to the end of the lease, and Valerie and I we're looking at our figures, and we knew what we were earning. We were no longer the fresh news. We'd been there for already 17 years in 2016. It's a long time. It's a long established business, but gradually it's more and more difficult to reinvent yourself, to keep full and keep the numbers up where they need to be profitable. And it just wasn't worth it anymore for the effort needed. And the only way that people were really generating that whole lot of media hype and everything was just by refurbishment. And I just could not justify in any way spending the $1 million odd Australian dollars required to refurbish Mark Restaurant. And it just wasn't worth it. And frankly, by that stage, I'd probably run out of energy for it.
Do you think fine dining has a place in the world today and tomorrow?
Yeah, it does. Fine dining, as you say, I think there's going to be a greater disparity between the haves and the have-nots. And I think that it's going to become less and less accessible. That I think there's going to be very much structurally tiered dining, that we're probably going to go into a worldwide recession if we're not already in it. They can print money all they like, which they're doing, trying to, ease the pain, but there is a recession. There is a recession coming, and people are going to have less money in their pockets for this type of thing. Discretionary spending, will be the first to go is retail and restaurants, hospitality. So people are also, I think, have become used in this time to sitting at home. And I know I have. I've enjoyed the family time. I've enjoyed a simpler life. It seems it's a life that I remember as a child growing up in the 70s and 80s, that it seems simpler. And even, my son mentioned it, Ethan, his 20s, said, he quite liked it. He loathed it at the beginning. I don't know what he'd be like without internet, but he's really enjoying it. And it's just like a simpler life. And I think people, and I know this, I've spoken to many, many people who are really engaging with this feeling that's generating at this time. It's almost there's a hopefulness, you know what I mean? Like that the air is clear and the streets are quiet, and it's like, wow, this is nice.
Well, I think a lot of opinions on this have been that, this pause has been generally good for our mental state of being, because it's giving us sort of a time of reflection. In terms of food, I mean, one of the chronic systemic issues with food is that people didn't know how to cook anymore. And all of a sudden, everybody's cooking. And so I think that the positive out of this is that we're rejigging people's relationship with food. And I know that you're putting a lot of energy into sharing your recipes and your ideas about food. What are you seeing back from your fans, if you will, in terms of their enthusiasm for this?
You don't have to put my fans in italics. Find people that they are. Quote unquote fans. I'm defending you people. No, they're loving it. I mean, the people, there's been probably two generations I've seen, or maybe 2 decades, I've seen the degrading of people's skills. There was a time in even kitchen design, where they were building units and the kitchen was getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And I think it was probably, 15 years ago when MasterChef and all these food shows hit, that suddenly went, oh, okay. And then the kitchen started getting bigger and bigger and bigger, to the point now where they're really the social hub of homes and apartment design. I work with AEG, so I work a lot with developers as well, and we talk about this type of thing, and they talk about their demographic modeling and how people work at home, how they engage, what they're doing at home. So there's a lot of study behind that. So the kitchen is now really the social and cultural hub of the home. People are cooking like never before. They're making, I think they're depleting the world of wheat with all the sourdough they're making. And I went down that rabbit hole myself. I tell you, it's a complete mind fuck.
Mark, you wrote a book again as a four-seer. That's kitchen basics.
Yeah.
So almost 4 years ago. I bet it's getting more use now than ever. What was the impetus to write that book, especially as at the time you were still a fine dining restaurant? It was almost like you were foreseeing this path you were going to go down later.
I've always loved to cook at home. Even when I was busy in the restaurant, I still cooked at home. I had entirely different disciplines. I love that aspect of cooking and maintain my passion. I mean, that's what I grew up with, and in my mother's side of the family especially. And so something I carried on, and I'd also been bemoaning the fact that people were getting less and less skilled. I mean, over the years, I've probably done hundreds of cooking classes and taught thousands and thousands of people cooking, and I just seeing the skill level from otherwise highly intelligent adults. I mean, I could have got some orangutans to chop better than half of these people. And I was bemoaning, I was just going, what has happened to the skill? I remember my grandmother and her mother and, even my mother, like how skilled they were, in the kitchen. And seeing these people, they literally hopeless in terms of motor skills and everything. They're thinking, wow, this is really an issue. And, as it came to it, I mean, when this time of COVID, I mean, people just suddenly going, oh my God, we're going to starve, we can't cook. So that's why, that was the impetus behind that book, Best Kitchen Basics. As you know, it's not a basic book. I tried to make it aspirational because of my ego, probably, but to show that yes, you still need me. It's not to give all my secrets, but
yeah, it's not really the basic book, but it is a lovely book, and I have done a couple of recipes, although not all successes. You
don't stick to the recipe, Arlene.
It's actually true. One of the things that you are allotted for many times in interviews and through people I've interviewed in your realm is the fact that you've been such a great mentor to the staff that have come through your kitchen. I heard you in an interview the other day talking about the fact that you still think this is a valuable career. As we know, it's going to shift. What would you say to young cooks today in terms of opportunities available to them that might not be traditional working behind a line in a kitchen? Things have expanded. Where else can people be going to get that kind of same satisfaction that you get from being a chef?
For the young people, I mean, I did a talk yesterday to the final, some culinary students are doing their final exams in Iowa, Fort Dodge in Iowa, the Iowa community culinary college. So about 15 of them. So it was really fascinating talking to those young people and seeing, you know, their hopes and dreams. And they're about to finish their course in the community college and get out into the industry. And I guess I don't want them to be just cannon fodder in a line somewhere, or to go into, you know, food production in a hospital or some industrial setting. I mean, that's a passion killer if ever you've come across it. But so I said that what I wanted them is to go to the most successful restaurant and just sit outside the door until they got a leg in and just learn the trade from front to back of house. I mean, I continue to say that as I did, and I went and sat outside Arpège in Paris in about 1998 and till they let me in the door. You know, and that really set my career on fire, that time in that 3 Michelin star restaurant. And food is also not just about the Michelin system. It suited me and what I wanted to achieve, but there has to be some ideal in terms of quality, whether it's street food, whether you want to work, whether you want to do one of those food trucks. Go to the most popular one with a line right out it, and you want to do that, well, go to that one, not the one that's empty. Learn why are people lining up? You know, why is it so delicious? How do they produce so many delicious things out of that tiny space? There's so much to learn from all aspects of the industry. You go to college, as you call it, or university or anything. I've always been sort of autodidactic, read enormous amounts, and if I didn't know something, then I took great pains to learn it, and I'm completely focused, whether that was photography or Premiere Pro, which I just learnt last week, or you know, playing guitar or cooking or making bread. I'm completely obsessed. So I'll pick a subject that suddenly obsesses me, and I will teach myself everything about it, and then I retain that knowledge. So it's just how I am.
Looking at those cookbooks behind you, on your lovely bookshelf, whose cookbook do you like as much as your own?
These are some of my favorites. This one by Pierre Gagne. That's what I love about it, is absolutely no recipes in it. That's what drew me to it. Like, you really have to know your craft to get anything out of that book. And this one as well, absolutely beautiful, and also the photography as well. That's a turnip, by the way. It's just cut into pieces. But it was always the French masters, the iconoclasts, you know, that I loved. People. And this is another book which is worth a fortune now, I believe, which is the Michel Bras book. Again, imagine when that picture was taken. I mean, it looks fairly common now. I mean, even YouTubers are doing this sort of food. But back when that was done, I mean, like, people are still using gold rim plates when he was doing this. So, you know, it's just like a modernist master. So quite amazing. How you interpret those books and those recipes, it's up to you. You will come up with a unique expression of those recipes reading the book. If you're watching YouTube videos or Instagram stories to learn how to cook, all you will do is to parrot what they're doing on screen. But using the books is a far deeper source of knowledge, and you'll come up with a unique expression of that and develop some personality in your cooking.
I was talking to Lisa Anderson yesterday, who's a lovely woman who you introduced me to. One of the things she said, which I've heard again and again echoed by chefs, which is again another inspiration that's coming out of this time, is that the restaurants that are succeeding are the ones that are really community driven. I mean, restaurants are about community. Chefs brigades, they're about family. What do you think about that reflection in terms of how we move forward and who's going to succeed in this business?
Restaurants that relied on high-end tourism, they're done. I mean, they're now having to build the community customer base, and good luck trying to build that now if you haven't always been engaging with your local community. Then, well, you're done. And she has this incredible farm up in Byron Bay, and she provided, I think, again, maybe my numbers are wrong, around about 20% of her fresh produce came from her farm to supply 11 restaurants. So it shows how prodigious the output is from that farm. but she's incredibly engaging in terms of the community. She has a shop in terms of the retail space that provides all of those vegetables. So it's just this constant community engagement, and she's very famous, and for good reason, but her customer base is entirely local. And I think there's a lesson there that's far more sustainable than relying on all of the marketing and all the aberrations, say World 50 Best, etc., that are required to run a restaurant that is driven entirely by tourism. And one of the biggest ones that probably stand out is Rene at Noma, where very few of the Danish locals dine there, a minor percentage. And so how does he build, how does he come back from that? How does he come back from that with no tourism and no international travel?
And to your point, we won't be doing a lot of that destination dining anymore. But I think that's probably...
It's Rene's point also is that does it feel right to catch a jet to eat in Copenhagen anymore, or to go and eat at Narusawa in Tokyo, to fly a jet like the bushfire crisis plus this? I mean, it doesn't feel right anymore it seems a little on the nose to me now to catch a jet and burn all that fossil fuel to go and eat something that the locals are not accessing. You know, it just, things were just getting too overheated, I think.
Do you think that your view on travel and the way you participate in activities and events globally is going to change as a result of this?
I think so. I think I'll be traveling far less. I was traveling so much with my job and other activities, you know, and I think that that's going to be far less. I mean, if you're in platinum status for Qantas, it means you're traveling too much. So
and so tell us, last question, Mark, what's the future hold for you? Where do you want to go?
I'm doing a lot more media. You know, I'm now a sort of a multimedia personality, Arlene. So, but I've now developing my 3-camera setup at home, so I'm going to do all my cooking videos. I have to produce a lot of content for AEG, which is my only outlet for them now, and also for Dream Cruise Line. So I'm going to be doing half a dozen videos for them using sort of Asian-inspired ingredients, inspired by the destinations that we used to go to, you know, Philippines and Japan and Korea and Japan, China, Thailand, Langkawi, etc. So just doing different recipes from there and just filming that at home and then editing and all producing that sort of media. And I have some other products that I'm going to be supporting as well in terms of being an ambassador, food-related products, which is something new that happened today. So very exciting stuff. You know, Australian product that I'll be supporting, and also doing that sort of media support as well. So I think, you know, that's always been something, as you know, something that's interested me, which is, you know, writing and photography and that. So I'm just sort of moving more towards that and documenting my own cooking in a way, which is a nice thing. It's a bit of a one-stop shop.
Mark, thank you.
My pleasure. Lovely to see you again.
Lovely to see you too.
We do Berlin again. We do Warsaw again.
Yeah.
We do Berlin. Even Toronto. I'll go to Toronto again.
We'll make something happen soon.
If I must, but Berlin preferably.
Okay. Thanks, my love.
Bye. See you. Bye.
Bye. Were you cheated on the final table?
You know, I was robbed.
Why do you think you should have won?
Because I'm brilliant and I'm the best.